spring of 1916, and Martin Glynn, former governor of New York and owner of the Times Union newspaper, is busy working in the den of his home he shares with his wife Mary. The Honorable Martin Glynn was asked to be the keynote speaker at the Democratic Convention. Woodrow Wilson was the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, up for re-election. Mr. Glynn's speech at the Democratic Convention echoed Wilson's isolationist ideals perfectly. But in April of 1917, less than 1 year after Glynn's brilliant speech, Wilson concluded that America could not remain neutral and asked Congress to declare war on Germany. Mary Glynn, Martin's well-read wife, saw that coming.
It is the duty of this nation to avoid war by every honorable means.
But Martin, we won't be able to stay neutral. America cannot avoid war. If Wilson will not act, then the war will come directly to our shores. Germany will conquer Europe and then go on to the greatest prize of all, America. Oh, Wilson's stance is short-sighted and foolish, Martin. War is inevitable if Europe is conquered.
So now you're soothsayer and you know more than the commander-in-chief. Mary, I know this is important to you, but I must work on this speech. I need to convince hundreds of men at this convention.
Oh, yes, men. There's another problem. You have to convince only men. The women have no say. Well, that shall change soon. The women's suffrage movement is becoming a great force, Martin. I myself have not joined it, merely out of respect for your political career, but I'm not certain how much longer I can stay on the sidelines while more and more women are fighting for the right to vote. Why, my friend Grace Reevy, she's holding a protest very soon. I do not think I will be able to keep silent. America, home of the free, land of the brave. How free is it when half of her population, the women, are unable to have a free and equal voice in our government? And how brave are the men? What, are they afraid of the women? Afraid that we'll have better ideas for reasonable and equitable and fair government?
Damn it, Mary, not now. This is the speech of my lifetime, and I must rehearse it.
Very well, Martin, I'm sorry. I won't interrupt again.
Others may follow the lords of war who ride among the corpses of mankind. We follow the President of the United States and seek inspiration for a humanity that aspires to higher things. We are a nation of peace rather than slaughter.
Very fine words, Martin. Fine indeed. Indeed, they are truly righteous. But they are only words. Everything will be wonderful and we'll all hold hands and sing pretty songs while Europe descends into hell, right? No. You and President Wilson and all of the Democratic Party, you are like ostriches with your heads in the sand. We must bind with our allies in Europe, not only to save them, but to save ourselves as well. Those lords of war you speak of, they will ride among our corpses if we do not come to the aid of our allies.
And just when did you become so educated on matters of war?
I read, Martin. Germany has no regard for America. Why, look at what happened to the Lusitania. 1,200 souls sent to their death, hundreds of them Americans. And the Italian cruise liner, hundreds more innocents killed and dozens of them Americans. Germany is barbaric. They have already begun to destroy our trade routes and impair our freedom to travel abroad. What do you suppose the future will hold for us?
The whole lot in Europe are corrupt. The Habsburgs, the Turks, the Kaiser, the Tsar, the French and the English. They all are fighting to hold on to their empire and try to gain more territory. Take the British Empire, for example. How many articles have I written exclaiming the right of Ireland to be free from English rule? And what happened this spring? the British Army gunned down Irish citizens, including innocent civilians who tried to assert their freedom. No, Mary, we must stay clear of this conflict. President Wilson, whom we are trying to get the nomination for, would agree with me. Now, please, let me resume. You can't create an army. You can't build a navy in the course of a day. If our navy is not strong enough, if our army is not big enough, the Republican Party is to blame. They have been in charge 80% of the time in the last 50 years.
Oh, Martin, I am as concerned as you are about our weakened military. But to blame the Republicans is both catty and pointless. We were at peace. Oh, I cannot wait until the day when our Constitution is amended and women have the right to vote. Then perhaps you men will act reasonably.
You're probably right about this, dear. But may I continue? The Democratic Party advocates preparedness for defense, not preparedness for aggression. This convention must make it plain that all divisions of the American people stop at the ocean's edge. Americanism and peace, preparedness and prosperity, these are the issues upon which the Democratic Party stands.
Mr. Glynn's speech was hailed as brilliant, but Mary proved to be correct. Women had no voice in politics in 1916. They could not vote until the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920, but they definitely had opinions, and with the vote they were able to do more than simply disagree with men. Martin Glynn died by his own hand in 1924. His chronic back pain became too much to bear, and sadly he felt only death would spare him. Mary lived through the atrocities of the Second World War before dying in her home in Florida on New Year's Eve of 1948. She was no soothsayer, just an educated and reasonable woman who understood the greed of corrupt empires. Both rest in peace in this elaborate mausoleum with their only child, the infant Ruth, and members of Mary's family. Rest in peace, Mr. Glynn.